Gentlemen, the time has come once again to discuss things.
Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Geeky Gentleman Holiday Month. I'm Sid Part2. Joining me today is
Santa
Baxi. You sit on his lap and you don't get the kind of present you were expecting, but you get one that's even better.
There's even a bow on it this year.
Oh my.
Did someone leave out the milk?
Yes, anyway,
I'd like to dump my cookies in there.
Jesus fucking Christ. Well, so if you came here for a nice PG discussion about a G-rated film,
is this rated G?
Probably PG, I don't know.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say, there's a couple scenes where I'm like, is this really G?
I don't know. Yeah, so instead you get this. We're here today to review kind of a controversial, in a respect, Christmas film called The Polar Express. And I chose this because I watched it for the first time last week, and as suspected, I didn't get a chance to rewatch it, so I might be like a little hazy on it, but it just, watching this movie filled me with so many thoughts, and I just wanted to talk about it, because it's such a weird fucking movie in retrospect. Because, all right, bar none, I'll put this on the line right now, out the gate, before I even know a thing about what Steve actually thinks about this movie. Right? If this were animated in literally any other art style whatsoever, it would be a bona fide undisputable Christmas classic, and people would fucking adore this movie.
110%. There is no one on the planet that could convince me otherwise, that the animation is not the biggest hindrance in this movie.
It's such a, dude, this movie is so fucking imaginative and original. It has such great lessons without getting preachy, and it's just so goddamn creative and clever, but the animation is so terrible.
It's honestly kind of nightmare-inducing in places. What am I looking at when they get to the car of misfit toys left behind? It's just terrifying.
No, see, because that scene's meant to be creepy, and I want to talk about that scene a little bit more later on, but The scenes that are unsettling and creepy are the ones that aren't meant to be in any way, shape, or form. So, the biggest one that stands out to me is that poor little girl's smile. Every time that little girl smiles, it's fucking terrifying.
There's a little bit of Did you ever watch Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory? Not Willy Wonka, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
The Tim Burton one, yeah.
The Tim Burton one, yeah. There's a little bit of Tim Burton, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory versus Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory with this movie, where the idea is they had to do it in this kind of animation style to capture the art style of the paintings in the children's book. But a lot like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, because it's closer to the book, it almost misses the spirit of it in a way where Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory may not be, but it definitely feels like the book.
Yeah, no, I can definitely see where you come from with that one, because it's just, it's just, there's so much in this that just makes you real out of your fucking seat with the look of it. And I didn't know that this was based on a book. I don't pay enough attention to like the credits of movies most of the time to pick up on that, at least on a first go round.
Did you not read the book as a kid?
No, never even heard of the book.
Wow.
Yeah. No, I was just like, okay, yeah, so Polar Express. I thought it was like, I don't know, like a fucking Tom Hanks vehicle, basically.
I mean, it kind of is.
Like if we got to the end of this, it was like written by Tom Hanks for himself or something. I would not have been surprised. I just thought it was like an original concept for a Christmas movie from Zemeckis, and it's weird because Zemeckis was like in love with this style for a good long while. He did the Jim Carrey Christmas Carol in this style. He did there's like one or two other movies in this style that he did, right?
Yeah, it's Christmas Carol, it's Beowulf,
Beowulf,
it's what's the other one? There's one more
it's not
that stars Steve Carell that's got like a bunch of action figures, and I don't remember the name of that one.
Oh, okay. I don't know. It's just such like he was really, really in love with the technology of this, because this isn't just like CG animated, right? Because it's 2004. We knew how to do CG animation by this point. It's the fact that it's motion capture put onto animated figure, like put onto CG figures. So like when Tom Hanks is doing this and when Jim Carrey's doing his thing in that movie, it's like actually capturing their live performance with like the motion tracking dots all over their face, and I believe they're even wearing like motion capture suits on a set doing all the work for this. And then it's just being applied to a CG character, and I don't know where the fuck the breakdown in communication happens, but it happens quick and it happens hard and it crashes bad, man. I don't know who the fuck told him this was a good idea to release.
There was like there's a weird confluence of procedures with this, because you've got the motion capture actor, you've got the animated model, and then you've got different voices for the animated versions of the characters for the leads. So like Tom Hanks is the voice of the conductor, and he's the voice of the older kid, or the kid when he grows up. But the motion capture for the kid and the voice actor for the kid are different. And it's the same with the girl co-star, and it's the same with the littlest kid. And then in some cases, the singing voice is also different from the voice actor. So there's just this weird dissonance between everyone involved in the movie. And I get the sense that Tom Hanks was trying to avoid a lot of this. Because you're right in the sense that it's a Tom Hanks vehicle, because Tom Hanks is the one that wanted to make this movie. He wanted to make this movie ever since the book came out originally. So like as far back as like the 90s, he was trying to pitch this movie. And he lobbied really hard for it to be a live action movie. And that eventually broke down because the argument was it would just be too fucking expensive to make like an entire Polar Express movie. I am not convinced that's true. I feel like you probably could have made the movie on the cheap with a mid-2000s budget and it looked better than this animation, which probably would have been a lot more expensive in the early 2000s than it would be today. But for whatever reason, Tom Hanks agreed and made it animated. And instead of doing it with like one of the established animation houses at the time, he did it in Zemeckis' really fucking weird style. And I appreciate Zemeckis being like one of the only people in Hollywood who wants to make animated movies that haven't just given up on making humans look unique and interesting and different from the Pixar Disney style. Because it feels like 90% of animated movies just have the exact same character models for everyone, and it gets kind of bland and annoying. So like kudos for him to try and do something a little bit different. But
caveat,
this wasn't it.
Should also
this was
be
not
good.
it. Yeah, different doesn't mean good.
Yeah, no, it's
an A for effort. A very terrifying Lovecraftian A, but an A nonetheless.
I mean, isn't it just such a fucking like heartbreaking moment that like you cannot possibly watch this movie in isolation and just like look past it, because people have been talking about the animation in this movie since it came out. Like, this was the big thing, and like no one talks, I feel, about the movie itself. It's just about the animation because it's so divisive. Like, some people, God help them, really like it. I'm a big CG fan. Like, I like CG animation. I do find it has its superiorities to traditional 2D drawn animation that, like, goes beyond just it's cheaper. And this movie, like, at times has some really good arguments for that. It's just the motion capture of the characters. So I guess to transition a little bit and talk about some of the good the animation does for this film, in the fact that they made it all a CG picture. The fact it's all on a train, right? This isn't something that's like talked about a lot with animation, but one of the things that's just not only easier but like more effective with CG animation is volumetrics. So when you need something that is a specific rigid shape that doesn't move or flex, CG will pretty much be not only easier but also look better than 2D animation all the time. Kind of the go-to example I have for this is everyone rants and raves about how cool Batman the Animated Series was and how great that Batmobile was. But when you see that thing like driving over hills, it looks really weird because it's like they have to like bend it. It doesn't quite work right, you know? Whereas when you do something like a vehicle, you know, maybe a train, in CG, you can like have it do a lot of stuff and it never looks like weird because it's a rigid body. And you're not having to have an animator try to compensate for the curve and the movement of this rigid body. And so not only do you have the train looks really good here, you have the train do some really fucking cool stuff, like these big sweeping moving shots that are just going all over this train and showing you like every nook and cranny of the thing. And then you got like these fantastic action sequences that just, you're going inside and outside of the train and shit's just hitting the wall and like the characters are rolling around and moving in it and like, that all looks great. That all is absolutely fantastic, and that is, I think, a really good example of when, you know, this is done right. And one of the advantages to doing this as a CG picture is just the failings of this movie are entirely on the choice to do it in this motion capture, quote-unquote, realistic animation style. That and other scenes, like, aren't even because of the motion capture. They just look, like, lazy and cheap for the people. The Hot Chocolate song is fucking terrible. Like, the waiters come in really and they all have, like fucking PS1 GoldenEye faces. With just, like, a single...
The dancing on the tables and stuff where it looks like they're not even really on.
Yeah, but like it's just the faces, man. They don't. None of the waiters have an expression. It's so weird.
I mean, again, this is why it's terrifying. Imagine a man singing to you jollily from a body that does not look like it supports that vocal range at all.
Yeah, that and just the fact that like I don't think the waiters open their mouths while they're singing.
I mean, you're probably right. The Hot Chocolate song, I think, is the perfect microcosm of everything that would take someone out of this movie. Because it comes out of fucking nowhere. Tom Hanks kind of can't sing, or at the very least is not putting in a great singing performance in that scene. And then the waiters just show up out of nowhere, look terrifying, and all of just like the physical motions feel off.
Mm-hmm. Yep. No, you're right. It's
if someone turned off the movie when they got to that point and they said, okay, I had enough, I would not blame.
Yeah, no, it's fucking craziness, which is, again, it's a real shame because so much else about what goes on in this movie is so fucking good, man. Just everything that, like, the scene that really honestly got me is at the very end, you know, where he and his sister can hear the bell and his parents are like, oh, I'm sorry your jingle bell broke. That's kind of sad. And then it's just... eventually my sister couldn't hear the bell, and all my friends that could stopped being able to as the years went on. But I never stopped. I'm like, it's so fucking good. It's so wholesome. And there's like some really great character interaction and just like general kids stuff that's like really sweet in this. And it's just, I don't know, as much as I want to talk about all of that, and I do want to try, it's really hard not for it all to be completely undercut by the animation.
Well, I mean, there's, when it comes to stuff like film, as opposed to like the children's book, because it's such a collaborative effort between so many people, it can sometimes feel kind of reductive to just be like, the script is really good, therefore the movie's really good. Because if the other cogs aren't moving in sequence with it, then it really doesn't matter how good the script is. So like, yeah, there's a lot of moments in this movie that are like quintessentially great ideas for a children's movie about Christmas. Like the very premise that it's like a road trip movie, except it's kids who are coming to understand the meaning of Christmas and believing in Santa, is so wholesome and so good, and it's so enjoyable. And there's so much about the journey on the train and the fact that all of the characters don't have names, and so it's just an emotional stand-in for all kids. It's all really well written, but the rest of the package that it's written into is just so distracting that I almost feel like I can't really give it that much credit for a good script if like the vision for the movie feels wrong. Mm-hmm. In a lot of ways, Zemeckis reminds me in this of like an anti-James Cameron, because with James Cameron movies and his use of CGI and his trying to push that technology forward, a lot of it is grounded in how can I use this to show you things you've never seen before with the language you're familiar with. So like the classic example now is the action scenes in Avatar are rendered almost entirely with motion capture and CGI, but the camera movements are done in a way that could be accomplished with an actual camera. And that's what makes them so captivating, that the camera has a point of view and that it's not just kind of ethereally floating around like in other shitty action movies with CGI. Zemeckis is kind of the opposite, where he seems like he's more interested in what can I make the animation do that you couldn't actually do with a camera, and then just kind of lean into it. And so this movie's got really interesting choices for transition, where you go in from like one character's perspective to the two like train conductors screaming over the front of the train trying to replace the bulb, or like the opening of the movie where he's got the book and you're looking through the book with the words backwards into his face. Theoretically, you could probably rig something to make that shot work, but doing it in animation and allowing those transitions to happen is something unique, and it's something worth trying. And I think that's really interesting. I think he's really trying to use the motion capture technology to do something, but either that the technology wasn't there, which we know isn't true because we've seen animated movies from around this time that are really good, like The Incredibles, which came out the same year, or it's a matter of he had too many ideas and couldn't like zero in on how they enhance the script. Because the magic of this movie that really works, that you mentioned before, is the train. Because the architecture of the train, the geography of the train, moving back and forth and concentrating the action sequences on different elements of the train and different carts and on the roof and with who's sitting where and stuff, all of that's really, really good. But there's too much other stuff going on in terms of him trying to like figure out cool things you can do with the motion capture CGI, so that none of the elements feel like they're getting refined to the point where they need to. And I respect him wanting to use the motion capture to kind of mimic the art style of the book, but that sort of children's book painted quality doesn't translate to 3 dimensions. Like, you can make that into an animated movie really well, but it has to be like a 2D animated movie. And you can maybe mix the 2D with a CGI train. That might have worked. But 3D and that art style, I just don't think was the right move for that story. Like, if you've seen those images from that book as a kid, it's there's something about it where it's meant to look flat. It's meant to have like the watercolors and stuff on them. The CGI just feels kind of wrong. In the same way like the Grinch kind of has that, where like the intention behind the Grinch movie in live action just kind of ruins the magic of that book. Not simply because it's a bad movie, but because the distinctive style of Dr. Seuss's book is not something that feels like it makes sense in live action.
I don't know if I 100% agree about the idea like the painting, watercolor painting style of the book isn't really meant for CG. I haven't seen the book though, so I can't, I haven't seen the images from the book, so I can't say that 100%. But I've seen enough people do stuff with CG where they do really cool texture work to make something look like it's a flat painting, and then suddenly it like kind of comes to life and stuff. I think if you're intending it to look like a painting but you want it to move, then CG kind of is your default to do that with, because the amount of detail you can get on only having to make the character the one time, as opposed to having to go through and, you know, conceptually hand paint them every time, is you know, there's an inherent advantage to that. Of course, you'd probably have to make more than one, just for, you know, different environments and stuff. But again, still a lot of potential time save there, as far as just you can actually do it without it taking 30 years, kind of thing. So I would say there's at least the potential for it to work. See, it's funny because you say that this is trying to mimic the art style of the book, and I just kind of look at this and I don't get like a hand painted kind of watercolor look from this. I just get like a, you know, a very warm body CG simulation. Is the only thing I really see from it. I don't see it as trying to look painted in the slightest. So if it's trying, then I guess that's just another manner in which it kind of fell
that's
flat.
the thing. That's the thing, is that like if you don't see it, then it definitely failed at its job, because that's what it was trying to do. It was trying to look like the images from the book.
I mean,
Which maybe watercolor is the wrong word for it, but like the painting of the images in the book, if you look at it, I feel like you'd be able to tell pretty quickly that they tried to go for this style, but they clearly were not able to make it work the same way.
I'm just curious. I got to do a quick, like.
I'm sure you'll find something on Google.
Yeah.
I'm surprised, because it's a pretty famous children's book, and a lot of the images are kind of burned into my brain. Like even the poster for the movie, like when it was coming out, it kind of had that Batman '89 vibe of like, you don't need anything over the image. It's just the cover of the train in the exact same angle as the book. And everyone knew exactly what it was. And I've never to this day seen a poster for this movie that's anything except the CGI render from the movie of the book cover. And so like it's really trying to draw that connection. But I don't know, man. I look at the book cover and I just think it looks infinitely better.
No, I definitely see what you're saying about the art style. It's intending to mimic it. I think you're right. Watercolor, probably not the right word, but it's definitely like got this painted look to it. But I think there's too much like glow or gloss or something to the characters in the movie compared to the book. They all kind of seem to have a bit of a sheen to them, and I don't think that's really what you want. Because there's a warmth to the images in the book that I think they're trying to replicate with the CG. You're definitely right. There is an attempt. It's just not quite, I think, the attempt that they wanted to go for. Man, what a disappointment.
And the theme of the book artistically, because warmth is the exact right word. It's very much a book that feels like it's trying to capture all of the nostalgic and warm feelings of Christmas. And in both cases of the story, the sort of like basic metaphor of it is like the coldness of the outside that you can withstand because of the warmth you feel inside and the connections you have to the people around you. And so like stuff like the hot cocoa bit and the toys that were left disheveled and taking the lonely kid and being friends with him and stuff like that. All of that in the book kind of builds to a moment when you meet Santa at the end where you're standing outside and it's snowing, but that warm glow of that person is the spirit of the holiday, is that you want to end up like this. You want to grow up and be like that man who radiates warmth regardless of where he is. And that's certainly like in the text of the movie, but I feel like the movie does a poor job of selling that visually. And we can move on from the CGI after this if you want to. But that's my big thing against the CGI here. Where like I'm not against the choice of trying it, but I think the point of the art style really succeeds in the book, and it's trying to do that in the movie, and it just kind of fails that language pretty badly.
Yeah, no, I think so. Like, anything you say negative about this movie and you root it in the animation, I'm probably gonna agree with you.
How do you feel about the voice acting? Because I mentioned a second ago about how like they get different motion capture actors and different singing voices and different voice actors for the role. So like Tom Hanks does the train conductor and he does Santa, and he does like the adult version of the main kid, but the main kid's voiced by someone else, and he's motion captured by someone else, and then like the main girl is voiced by someone else, motion captured by someone else, and then sung by someone else. Did that feel jarring at all to you?
I mean, I will say I never noticed the voice change for like going from singing to anything like that. I never picked up on, oh, that's a different voice actor. Maybe if I'd seen it more times, I would have picked up on that, but I did not notice that distinction. For me, the voice acting is all like serviceable. I think the annoying kid that's like trying to like way too into everything is overselling it a bit.
Oh yeah, Mandark.
Yeah, it's like a bit much. Fucking pump the brakes on that one a little bit. Is
that dude? That dude's like Iago. Like if you remember the voice of Iago from Aladdin, because that guy's the voice of Mandark from Dexter's Lab. If you listen to that man or see him in any role ever, it's always the same voice. Like Iago will sound like Iago forever. The actor's voice is
Gilbert
just
Godfrey.
Iago.
Yeah, he's fucking amazing.
Yeah. No, it's exactly the same voice no matter. But the know-it-all kid who voices Mandark, he's exactly the same way. There's never been a thing that man has ever been in where he has not sounded like that.
Yeah, no, that's too much. That's just like, to me, I think that's not necessarily like a oddity of voice casting. That's just like a bad choice, as far as casting goes. That's just a bad decision.
Yeah, I mean it's the DreamWorks thing of like you hire the actor instead of trying to cast the role.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I didn't really know him from anything else. It's funny, Mandark, that you mentioned. I'm like, wait, Mandark. Where do I know that name? I'm like, ah ha ha. It took me a minute. But yeah, it's dude. How many fucking years has it been since I've seen Dexter's Lab? And I don't think I could tell you another fucking quote from that show beyond "Get out of my laboratory, Didi." But just the fucking like, really, you know what? Honestly, respect.
Oh, yeah.
The man fucking cemented himself in my memory for decades to come. So
one day in like 40 years, you're gonna wake up in a fever dream, and you're just gonna be hearing Mandark, and you're gonna be like, "Where is that from?"
Yeah. But anyway, I don't think that's like the voice casting never really stood out to me beyond the like elephant in the room of why the fuck is Tom Hanks playing everybody? Like,
he wanted to.
I think that's a bad decision. Like, I
agree.
I like Tom Hanks. Don't get me wrong. I think he's a good actor, and I think the conductor is a perfectly good role for him because it's like it's the adult character that you see the most in the film.
Yeah.
But he's the conductor, he's the bum, he's Santa Claus, he's the adult version of the kid that's the main character. Why? Like, and he doesn't even really do a different voice for all of these, like, he does a different performance, certainly, but he doesn't, like, put on... He's no Mel Blanc, right? He doesn't put on a new voice for each character. He just... This is Tom Hanks playing this character. So I just don't understand that decision. And it's, like, incredibly obvious. Right out the gate, too, which is really funny. You know, it's funny.
Really distracting.
You talk about this being like the thing that Tom Hanks was kind of fighting to get made and stuff, and like, dude, you were Woody. You had 2 Toy Story movies under your belt at this point. You didn't have any fucking pull at Pixar to get this fucking movie made by Pixar. Like, come on. You were the like. The one that launched their fucking studio, man. I'm just saying. Never mind. You know what, Tom Hanks, you do you. But I'm just saying, there were decisions made, clearly.
Tom Hanks, maybe it's modern fatigue in a way it wouldn't have been in like 2004 when this movie came out, but I think I'm just kind of sick of fucking Tom Hanks.
Oh, yeah?
I'm just getting so tired of him coming out every year with some kind of like loosely autobiographical biopic-y movie where he's maybe got a little bit of a rough exterior but is actually a kind-hearted old person. He's in so many movies every year where he's just effectively playing the same role over and over and over again.
Yeah,
I'm just kind of sick of it.
He did Sully. He did the Disney. What was Saving Mr. Banks.
Saving Mr. Banks, Captain Phillips. There's just The Post, like the Greyhound, News of the World. Like just off the top of my head, like every year it's this kind of movie. And he's been doing this for a long ass time. Like he's been doing this as far back as like 2002 with Catch Me If You Can, which I love that movie. But man, I'm just so fucking sick of him. I heard someone describe Tom Hanks as like modern day Jimmy Stewart, where he's kind of like America's lovable uncle kind of actor, where he's sort of turning in the same performance in every movie, but he's always playing the same kind of spirit of the same character and everything. And so we kind of grow ourselves to be endeared to him. And I think the difference is because Jimmy Stewart is dead and it's been several decades, I can see that argument. Tom Hanks is alive and he won't shut up.
You realize that Jimmy Stewart was doing this while he was alive as well.
No, I agree. I wasn't, though. That's the important thing, is that I would probably be sick of it if I was living in the 50s and 60s. But like, if I have to see one more movie where Tom Hanks is Mr. Rogers, Walt Disney, lawyer from Bridge of Spies, Captain Phillips. Christ. Yeah, like if I see one more goddamn movie where he's doing this, I'm gonna lose my fucking mind. So like, it's nothing against this movie, but like the second I hear Tom Hanks's voice, I just kind of internally groan. And that's nothing against this movie. There's nothing wrong with him casting himself in this movie in 5 roles, whatever. I'm just really fucking sick of Tom Hanks.
I mean, I guess it's not fair, but I guess I understand where you're coming from on it.
Yeah, no, it's not fair at all. At
least in this, he's not that. Like, he's not... One, it's not autobiographical. You know, it's just different. It's, you know, he's actually fictional characters in this. So that's good. He's a bit more of a mentor figure in this, which, you know, not necessarily checking entirely different boxes, but just not even mentor. He's like a chaperone in this, by and large.
I like him as the hobo the most, honestly, because you mentioned the conductor, which seems like a very classic Tom Hanks role, and you're right. And I know he really wanted to play Santa, and I feel like he'd be good at that, both voice-wise and live action. But I love him as the hobo. Because I think the hobo is probably one of the most interesting characters in the movie, where he's just kind of roaming around, almost like a spirit of Christmas out of the Christmas Carol. And the scenes that I think work the best in terms of the writing and the animation are the ones with him, like the one where he just kind of blips out of existence and you hear like the teapot crash against the top of the tunnel, or the one where he's like pulling everyone back into the train and then his fingers fade out into the snow. Like that stuff looks really cool and it's kind of haunting.
Yeah, no,
in a good way.
I was really not sure what to make of like what that character is meant to represent, but it was very like interesting. And I liked that element of it. And that's something I enjoyed about this movie is watching it. Like it's still a movie meant for children, but it doesn't spell every single thing out. Like I was left with some questions at the end of this movie that I really liked. Like obviously the bum is there to help guide the kid along his path and to help him learn his lesson. But you're not, like, entirely sure what his function is, right? Like, he's both helping and like, kind of, you know, hindering or trying to, I guess, convince him to go down, like, a darker path or maybe being kind of like the devil's advocate. You know, he's got this, like, interesting, seemingly contradictory role in the story. Like, the first thing he says is, now you want to believe, you just don't want to get duped. And there's something to that. There was something like juicy there, you know?
Yeah.
I really, really liked his role in the film. And again, it's just weird that it's Tom Hanks as well.
I like him as kind of the chaotic counterweight to the more sort of systematic joy of Santa. I like it like on the one end of the spectrum, you've got like the big, jolly, wonderful, completely put together image of a perfect Christmas. And then on the other hand, you've got someone that's completely the opposite. That's disheveled and creepy and disappears and is lanky and weird. But they're both kind of like pushing the kid in similar directions. Where you can kind of see like a benevolent side to the hobo of like, even if he's not playing himself as the greatest person in the world, maybe there's sort of like an element of a cautionary tale of like you can go between both of these characters in trying to adhere to some form of Christmas spirit. I liked all that stuff a lot. I thought that was maybe the most interesting part of the film version versus the children's story, because it's not like the book is especially long, so it's not getting into a lot of these really more complicated things. And I think allowing the movie to breathe and have that character show up in more scenes and being aided by like a voice performance and animation, that element of it really comes alive. So I liked all of that, and I agree with what you said about like this not being. It's a bit more vague than a traditional kids movie. A lot of people like to divide animated movies into the camp of like it's either like a kids movie intended to entertain children, or it's like a family movie that anybody can watch. And I think that can be kind of reductive sometimes, because it can be a kids movie, but you can still you should still be able to talk about it in terms of something that's a little bit larger than what a kid might have a capacity for. And kids are able to think about things in a way that is more complicated. So you don't just like turn on the fucking Minions movie and hope they don't break shit while they pay attention. So this movie toes a really nice line where I think it's kind of mesmerizing if you're a kid, but I also feel like there's something deeply imaginative and thought-provoking about it, even as a kid, that doesn't necessitate it being like a movie for adults. Like I don't need this movie to speak to me, but I can very much see a kid watching it and being like really entranced by like what the fuck is going on. And I remember being like that too when this movie came out when I was like 10 or 11 years old. But granted, half of that was because I was terrified.
Fair. I don't know, there's just interesting ideas inherent in this. Like, one thing I don't love in a lot of Christmas movies is how much of a focus there is on there's not really a Santa, you know? Because that's the thing, like I get what the movies are trying to do, which is trying to like celebrate the belief and the faith and just the wonder of Christmas. but like intentionally or not, this just has the effect more of seeding the idea inside the kid's head that there's not really a Santa Claus. This is just, the things that the adults make movies about, kind of thing. Like, I like a lot of these movies that do this. I like the Santa Claus. I like Elf. I like plenty of these films. But at a certain point, you're just like making it too evident. Like, at a certain point, the number of people say, no, Santa's real, begins to make you as a kid question, oh, is he though? And that's kind of the problem I had with a lot of movies. So to take a whole movie where that's the whole message, is just that wonder, that like questioning of it, and just drown the kid in all the evidence he would ever need right out the gate, right? Of just the magic of Christmas, and the fact that you get to this scene where literally Santa is there are elves, there's a reindeer, there's a sleigh, and he still doesn't believe in that moment, is so powerful to me. It's just like, no matter how much quote unquote evidence you give to a kid, once that door has been opened, it's almost impossible to close. And the fact that the kid's journey is like all summarized in just wanting to believe, not needing the evidence around him, but just wanting to believe because he wants to hear the jingle bells like everyone else. It's just so fucking sweet to me. I legitimately I kind of teared up at that scene.
No, I agree with you completely. That's one of those moments where the movie could have taken a really clear, like, children's book territory turn and just kind of not become anything special. But that's such a strange thing to do, right? Like, can you imagine like pitching this movie and then being like, and then he's confronted by all of Christmas majesty and he sees Santa, and Santa's like, do you believe now? And the boy, welling up and thinking at this man standing in front of him, he's like, no. It's such a weird, like, Rorschach kind of moment. Mm-hmm. And I'm very much here for it. I really appreciate ambiguity that represents, like, a tension of two ideas and not just kind of the lack of any ideas. Where Joss Whedon's talked about this when he talks about season 2 of Angel, where he has Angel give a speech about the universe being meaningless. And he comes to that epiphany in a moment where there was clearly some kind of divine intervention to help him get through something. And Whedon says in that moment, he wrote Angel to say something that he believed to his core. It was his most foundational principle. And then in the scene, he wrote it so that he was instantly contradicted. And the tension between that commitment to his belief and the tension of the opposite is kind of what yields the emotional catharsis there. That's what yields people thinking about it and being entranced by it and wondering about it. Like, to this day, there's not like an answer in Angel where you're like, so did God really just come down and save the day there? What exactly happened there? Like, there is no answer there at all. And the conflict between that is what makes that such a powerful moment that you're always kind of going back to and wondering, like, okay, was it one thing or the other? And this movie has that too. And I really like that. And it's surprising that it's in a movie like this that is very much aimed at kids. And I think it goes to what I was saying before about just, if you let something be imaginative and creative enough, you don't really need it to moralize to you in like a kid's movie fashion. Your mind can just kind of start spinning at the possibilities of what you're watching. And you don't have to understand it and you don't have to come to an answer. You can just kind of be entranced by the thought of it.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. And I really liked that about it, is and that's his journey, right? He's like confronted with all this evidence, like, just, there's a fucking locomotive in your goddamn middle of your street in the middle of the night on Christmas. Like, come on.
It's been 5 minutes to Christmas for like 3 hours. Yeah.
Yeah, right? Like, it's just, It's so crazy right out the gate. And then the movie just starts to give you so much like doubt, and it's like, oh, and then he lost the jingle bell, and then he woke up and his pocket wasn't ripped, but he still believed because he had the experience, and that's was the important part. And then he never lost that belief. That's so good that they give you so many outs, but like the lesson is learned and learned like well, and God, I love that about it. Such a goddamn good premise for a movie. In that season, in that time frame. I don't know, man. It's a weird one. It's definitely like not the cleanest movie it could have been, and again, it is just shockingly disappointing how good this movie could be, and could just be an undeniable Christmas classic, if not for the animation, which is hilarious to think about because. You know what else are like undeniable Christmas classics are like the fucking Rankin Bass movies, and I think all of them look creepy as fuck.
They do. They look terrifying.
Yeah, but this one just on a completely different level. Like those look terrifying, but like still kind of dopey and sweet. Whereas this just that's just fucking wrong.
It's interesting because like the Rankin Bass ones, there's a side of it where it's like, oh, your kid's playing with toys and they maybe summon the devil, but it was your kid, so it's fine, it's cute. And this is just straight up the devil.
It's not a good time.
The Island of Misfit Toys, the Rudolph movie. Nothing about that movie is anywhere near as creepy as the train car scene in this one. Which you're right, is supposed to be creepy, but it's also just really, really fucking creepy to an absurd degree because it's not like you're looking at this horrifying little room and then these heartwarming characters who are like, oh, who could have done this to these toys? No, it's all of them. Everyone in that room is terrifying.
Including the children, especially the children.
Especially the children.
No, you're right.
That Ebenezer Scrooge doll might have been creepy, but he was not baby Tom Hanks creepy.
Yeah, no, you're right. It's weird though, because like, I don't know, I really do like that scene, not just for what it represents in the movie, just because like, I was having this conversation at work a couple weeks ago, where I've been watching some older Disney films with Leah just to try to change things up from fucking Moana and Frozen and Encanto.
Encanto's so good.
It's good the first like 2 times, and then you watch it 20 billion times, and then get back to me.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Side note: I have so many more problems with Encanto after watching it 7 billion times than I ever did in the beginning, to the point where I'm like, yeah, I mean, it's a decent movie, but also maybe, you know, magically solving all of these really deep-seated, like, intense, realistic family drama problems in, like, one song isn't great, because, you know, yeah, her sister was put under a lot of pressure, but also she's actively terrible to her in every scene of that movie, and up until that point, and I don't really feel like they properly reconcile that. She just kind of listens to her sing for a while, then it's like, oh, okay, I understand you were suffering. Yeah, but like, she was still a bitch though. So yeah, there's my take on Encanto. Same thing with the grandmother, honestly. But like, anyway, so getting back to the fucking like car of misfit toys, right? I don't know, man. We don't do this very often. Like, the fact that this came out in 2004 had me start like racking my brain to think of it, and I'm like, anytime I do something like this, there's always ends up being like an example, but I don't know, man. I was really having a hard time. We don't do like scenes that are just objectively terrifying in children's movies anymore. And I kind of miss it. We don't do like actually kill off a character unless they're the villain, in which case they at best plummet to their death, and we don't do like just that one scene that's like, oh fuck, that was terrifying. And I don't know why. I don't know why that fell off. Like, it's, you know, like it's infamous in old Disney films and stuff where you'd get like, you know, fucking pink elephants on parade, and you'd get like old Nicktoons and stuff. Like Ren and Stimpy was terrifying, like in a way that was fascinating. And like Looney Tunes would have sequences that are just like trippy as balls and fucking weird as shit. And like we've just collectively decided not to expose kids to that like freaky side of animation anymore. And I don't know why it stopped. I could posit guesses, but I do feel like something of value has been lost.
So surprisingly, I feel like that's a pretty common criticism about kids movies lately that I hear from a lot of people, that like I haven't seen anything like really directly address the why, but you're definitely not alone in that feeling. Because like even like when I listen to movie podcasts and stuff, they talk about how like we really should be allowed to like fuck up kids more than we're fucking them up with Disney and Pixar movies. Because like, oh, sad parent issues are one thing, but like Bugs Bunny getting his arm broken by a monster is a different kind of fucking up your children. And you should be allowed to do that. But like, I agree with you. And like, there are some notable exceptions here and there. I think that there's a reason why the Miyazaki movies have as much of a legacy as they do over time, not just because they're great movies and great works of animation and brilliantly cast in every language, but because they are also movies designed for children to watch with thought-provoking ideas and stuff that are also actually kind of terrifying. Like Ponyo is just the story of a little kid falling in love with a goldfish. And then the goldfish might fucking die and his family drowns. Like there's some weird fucked up things about that. What the fuck's the movie? Pocoroso is about a man who turns into a pig. And it's also just about Italian fascism on the side. So that kind of stuff is really interesting and really compelling. And I think there are good attempts at keeping that spirit alive. I don't know if you've seen it yet, but Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio movie is definitely more in line with what I would hope for in a kid's movie, where it's good and it's whimsical and it's heartwarming, but it's also just fucking terrifying in ways that are intentional and in ways that are like specifically scary to kids. Because that's maybe the other thing is everyone who watches media at a certain age will get something else out of it. And when you're making movies with specific themes in mind, you're kind of skewing to one audience based on what that theme is. Like Top Gun Maverick is an action movie for boomers, but it's also a movie about middle age and kind of going over the hill. And so anyone can watch it and appreciate it, but if you're middle age and going over the hill, you relate to it more. And kids also are fully fledged human beings that have experiences and feelings, and kids are irrationally afraid of some things that don't make sense to adults. And so really good classic kids movies are able to manifest those fears and paranoias in a way that's interesting and compelling for kids that stays with them, that they should be allowed to explore. And the idea that you don't want kids movies to be scary and weird is such a strange thing that I don't understand why Disney can't get out of anymore. Because you're right, they were very famous for having fucked up shit in kids movies before. Mickey Mouse cartoons back in the day were also kind of fucked up.
Mm-hmm.
But they're not anymore. I don't get it.
I think it's just like you know, I had a pretty rough couple weeks there with Leah where she was not wanting to go to sleep in her room alone. Like we were having that thing where, all right, I think she's out. All right, I'm gonna get up as slowly and quietly as I can, and then I'll walk to the door, and I'll close the door. You know, it's like it was fucking awful. It was terrible, and like we were sitting there trying to figure out like what was it, and we were throwing out every possibility of what we could have done to do this to her. And like the thing of, well, Ian, you took her to go see like Halloween decorations. Maybe that was it. So like we didn't put up the scarier decorations this year for Halloween because of it. And like yeah. And those are very like real like issues that you just have to deal with as a parent. Of sometimes your kid just has some kind of experience that you don't know how to trace it, and they're just scared, and it just kind of sticks with them. And I guess it's just like, if I had to guess, I would say it's probably just Disney getting complaints of those terrifying scenes from parents, and like kind of, you know, being more self-conscious about whether or not they should let that be in a movie. Because like when Disney bought like Star Wars and Marvel, that's like a very like terrifying prospect as far as just, you know, corporate ownerships of monopolies and stuff. But like on a certain level, from a artistic point of view, it's not the worst thing ever, because at least Disney is very good at quality control. Disney does not like to release bad movies that bomb. So Disney has a lot of quality control that they put into their products in order to try to make what they release successful and like just not be inherently bad. They don't always succeed, but they're, you know, Disney has flops, but they're like Tomorrowland, where it's just forgettable, right? Or it's like She-Hulk, where like, yeah, the CGI is kind of crap. That's about it. It's kind of forgettable. I don't know. I haven't fucking watched She-Hulk, but whatever.
It's pretty entertaining, honestly. I like that show.
Yeah, well, see, like it's, and for all the bitching though, right? But like, end of the day, they had quality control on aspects of it, if nothing else. So like, there is an assurance there. There's something of benefit artistically there, that things produced by Disney will have a certain level of quality. But sometimes that quality control like overreaches to the point where like the MCU has become just incredibly formulaic and bland, to the point where you can make some just really specific ass jokes about it that are just like so on point. Like, what's the fucking one? Marvel fans, when fucking Glub Shido shows up at the end of a movie. Oh my god, it's my favorite character, right? Like, just, and that's fucking all of them now, right? Like, fucking Thor: Love and Thunder has that whole scene with Hercules, and Doctor Strange: Multiverse of Madness has that whole scene with, I don't even fucking know who that bitch was.
Clea?
Yeah. I don't fucking know that bitch, man. And it's just like, it's acted like it's such a big reveal, but it's just at the moment, like, who the fuck is that? What's going on? But like, that's just because of, at this point, it's because of Disney quality control and like the formula of, oh, well, people really respond well when they get to see, you know, this character shows up at the end of the movie, so they get excited about the next one. And that's just kind of the aspect of it. So I guess this is just a long way of saying, as I guess parents just got too complainy about those like kind of creepy scenes in movies, and not only Disney itself, but also other companies trying to follow Disney's success have just by and large dropped those scenes from movies, because they don't want to deal with that. They want that G rating. They want that this is okay to watch for the kids alone in the room kind of thing.
Well, and that's part of what's interesting about this whole like weird cultural zeitgeist we're in, because one of the issues I have with Disney's cultural monopoly on Star Wars and Disney stuff is they're making Star Wars and Disney movies for adult Star Wars and Disney nerds, and not really like the core demographic of just general movie-going people. So like, Marvel movies have become this thing where regular moviegoers keep up with them, and they keep up with them with the knowledge that what they're gonna have to do is look at someone's Easter egg list on comicbook.com to confirm the names of the characters they've never heard of or read or will read, so they can prepare and do their homework for the next movie. So someone watched the end of Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness and was like, oh, that's so cool. I can't wait to see that person. I'm so excited. That's my favorite character. Google's, who was at the end of Doctor Strange 2? And then just kind of bandwagon onto it. And that kind of excitement process is part of the filmmaking, where they're not really making the movie for a general audience to experience on its own terms. They're making it for that constant stream rolling effect. And to bring up Miyazaki again, Miyazaki's really good about this, because the idea with his animated movies that he's kind of progressively leaned more towards kids because he feels like there's too much adult-oriented anime, is that the emotions and the feelings that the kids are worth exploring on their own terms, and you're making the movies for the kids. You're not making them for the adults who are turning them on for the kids. And so many animated movies have that perspective of, we got to make sure this appeals to not only the child, but it appeals to the child in the way that the adult understands, and in the way that the adult can kind of turn on, tune in, tune out. And regardless of what the kid wants, we want to make sure that the adult's incentivized to buy this for them and monitor it, and it's to their taste. So like DC Super Pets would have jokes that, and this is really interesting. I was listening to a movie podcast about a guy just reviewing kids movies because he has two kids, and they're in different age ranges. So he talks about like the experience of like watching the same movies hundreds of times, kind of like you do, but also like what appeals to kids and what doesn't. And he talked about all the kids movies that came out this summer, and he said DC Super Pets probably got the least number of laughs of any child that he's ever seen in a movie, because so many of the jokes were aimed at the adults, and so much of the childish stuff in the movies aimed at kids were also done in a way that would appeal to the adults sitting in the theater next to the kid. And so the target audience is kind of skewed. And so Miyazaki movies are very intentionally like, there's no like adult framework that makes something like Ponyo make sense. It's a kid's movie for really big emotions that only kids understand and kids will get invested in. And he doesn't fucking care if the adults got questions or is offended by the idea that a fish might die and a kid cries over it, or that a kid might have a goldfish girlfriend or something like that. It's nonsensical, but it's sensical if you're like a 4-year-old. And that's what's important. And to kind of circle it back around, I think Polar Express kind of does that too, where there's a lot of questions and there are very few answers, and there's a whole lot of vibe and not a whole lot of story, but it's just creative and enticing and thoughtful enough to make a kid really fall in love with the season and the movie. And that's kind of all that should matter for a movie aimed at kids.
Mm-hmm. No, I tend to agree with you. That like the Disney adult kind of character, and the fact that like I hate the man, but sometimes Alan Moore do be spitting when he says that too much stuff is just like taking these characters that were invented for children and trying to make them appeal and make them more and more appealing to adults, and it's like that's a problem.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about this a little bit with the Obi-Wan show, but like that's a show designed for like 40-year-old men who are pissed about the prequels trilogy still. It's not a show designed for people who like watching TV shows.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's just that like is becoming more and more of a thing, and it's, you know, as a adult that likes these characters and these things, yeah, sometimes I do enjoy that. And then sometimes I watch fucking 3-hour The Batman movie and I'm like, no kid's gonna sit through this.
No. That's cinema, though. That's for, like, movie adults.
It's also the children's character on screen.
You know what, though? Well, honestly, though, watching that movie, I think there is about as much fucked up, weird, not for kids material as, like, Batman Returns. And I'm sure if I was, like, 7 or 8 years old and I watched The Batman, I'd have a very similar reaction to how I had a reaction to Batman Returns, which was just complete horror, but also just a deep fascination with Batman. So I give it a pass on that level.
Fair. Did I ever tell you, fucking, like, I don't know why certain memories from my childhood only stick when they're related to dreams. But, like, this is one of them, right? So, my dad, when he lived in Fort Wayne, lived in a condo, and my room had these, two, like, you know, double door kind of opening doors, right? and those doors opened up to a little overlook that overlooked the living room. And I'm in bed and I'm asleep, but I'm having one of those dreams where like you still think you're awake and in your room, and I look up at those double doors, and on the face of each of the doors is Batman and Catwoman's face. Just like you remember the Silence of the Library episode of Doctor Who where like the things had just like the human face just on it. It was like that.
Oh yeah.
And I don't remember what they said to me, but I remember I just woke up screaming.
They DC like recently released like a kids book adaptation of Batman Returns.
Uh-huh.
And I was flipping through it at the store the other day. I think I sent some of the pages in the group chat. And no, it's still fucking terrifying. You can't kidify that. It's still fucking horrible.
Oh man, that's funny.
There is no way to make the scene where Christopher Walken pushes Michelle Pfeiffer out the window and her corpse is revived by cats licking her. So then she decides to take all of her leather and sew it together into a cat suit that can sound appetizing and normal for a child. Just no way. Can't happen. It's not possible.
Cool. I don't know. These are thoughts I have. These are things that happened in my life. All right.
Thoughts with Ian.
Yeah. Is there anything else we want to talk about specifically related to Polar Express?
Okay, I've got one last thing, and it's my normal, like, one last thing of just wanting to give lip service to talking about it without really talking about it because I don't know and understand the subject well enough. I like Alan Silvestri's score a lot. The music's really good and really captivating and very epic. It's not particularly, like, Christmassy, but I think it matches what the animation is trying to go for as like a big sweeping animated epic journey, even if it sometimes feels like it's not gelling with the film itself because it's not horrifying and Lovecraftian. But I like it a lot. I think it's good. I think it's a vibe.
I don't really have any thoughts about it. It didn't really captivate me, but it didn't distract me and like pull me out of all the other weird things that were happening in the film, so
Fair, yeah.
I guess it served its purpose kind of score for me, which most of the time is what you want a score to do anyway. Like a lot of, for all the great John Williams and stuff, most of the time you just kind of want the score there to help heighten everything and just like keep you engrossed in what's going on in the story. You don't want the score to like distract.
Well, and also I think a good score can also serve as like a good function of editing in a movie where it can keep up or slow down the pace depending on whether or not there's something lively as a beat to kind of keep you going through a scene that might be dragging. So like mixing like a traditional movie score with a lot of like old school like Frank Sinatra and Bing Crosby Christmas songs, I think was a pretty cool move. And I think it makes the movie sound just a bit more unique, where like at the background of any scene there's just like any number of like old school Christmas song playing, and I kind of dig that.
I agree. It was cool. I liked it fine. It didn't necessarily like stand out to me, but I thought it was serviceable. It's kind of my thoughts on that one. All right. Well, you want to go ahead and go on to ratings then?
I got you. I'm gonna give this, and this is mostly a reflection of the first like third of our conversation where we were talking about the animation and the give and takes. So that's where the deductions are really coming. My unfair hatred of Tom Hanks is not playing into it, I swear. I'm gonna give this 2 out of 5 mildly terrifying ballerina dolls just kind of hanging on frame for a couple seconds too long.
Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and give this 2 out of 5 random hobos on top of the train. That's what I got.
He do be random.
He do be random. I was not expecting him. He was a random occurrence. Anyway. Well, I think that's going to do it for this episode. Let's look here. What do we got? We got next Tuesday recording would be, and then that episode would go up on the 25th. So I don't really want to do 2 posts on the same day kind of vibe. So I guess we're just gonna do the one more episode. So do you want to come up with something, or do we want to try to let Alfie come up with something? Since you'd probably be able to be back by then. Do we want to just leave that up in the air?
Yeah, if he's back, we should probably get with him and see if he wants to discuss or review something. And then if not, I can come up with something and just message you.
Okay, that'll work. We'll message him. I know he's in the middle of flights right now, so we'll message him.
Why are you dating this conversation?
I don't know. Does it matter? Do you think someone's gonna do research on Geeky Gentleman?
Someone's gonna be like, wait a second. Based on the flight information, this episode had to have been on at exactly. and then it's over, and then we've stopped. And the illusion is gone.
Honestly, though, Steve, I would welcome someone to pay that much attention to Geeky Gentleman episodes.
I would just kind of be impressed by the commitment, honestly.
Right. All right. Yep. So that's going to do it for this episode. Everyone, thank you so much for watching. Until next time, I'm the Philosopher.
And I am the Ghost of Christmas Past.
And we are your Geeky Gentlemen. And we will be discussing things.
Ho, ho, ho! Merry Christmas!